All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. It is Tuesday, June 9th, 3:27 p.m. So we are going to get started. I am Councilman John Bullock, Chairman of the Housing and Urban Affairs Committee. I do want to acknowledge our colleagues who are with us today. So we have members of the committee, Councilman Dorsey of the 3rd District, Councilman Cohen of the 1st District.
Name's Chair.
Councilman Henry, who's actually in chambers with us from the 4th District for now. We also have Councilman Burnett of the 8th District, Councilwoman Sneed of the 13th District. Also, briefly in chambers was Councilman Costello, and we are also joined on our call by Councilman Pinkett of the 7th District, who has an agenda item which will be coming up later on this call, on this meeting. Also want to recognize Richard Crumrick as staff to the committee. Also, I know we have a very exciting item for you later on, which has to do with historic designation. But the first items that we have in front of us are around openings and closings of streets and alleys. I do want to recognize some of our agencies who are also going to be providing testimony for some of the items ahead of us. Now we have Eric Tiso from Planning, Stephanie Murdoch from Housing, Community Development, also Bill Burgee. Also I have Raven Thompson from BDC, Elena DePietro from Law, Liam Davis from Transportation, Matt Stegman from the Mayor's Office, along with Nina Thumelis. And we will get started in a second. Also from Parking, Arco Sen. Also from CHAP, Eric Holcomb. Thanks for joining us. I think we have covered everybody at this point. So let's get started. The first item, as I mentioned, is City Council Bill 190436. And again, that is that City Street's closing 3 10-foot alleys. We have gotten agency reports favorable from Law, Planning, HCD, DOT, and BDC. Is there anyone who wants to add to their testimony at this point or make any comments? Please let us know.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Matt Stegman from Mayor's Office. I don't have a comment on either of these bills. I just wanted to make note for Richard, if it's possible, could he elevate Liam Davis and Eric Holcomb? I believe they're both in as attendees, not panelists.
Okay, I think we're trying to work on that now. I see it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank
All
you.
right, perfect. All right, sounds good. Okay, are there any, I don't believe there are any questions from any of our colleagues around these? Pretty straightforward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm struggling to find the actual bill here and know where these actual alleys are.
Okay, so let me, Liam, do you want to step in on this one? Or I can read them off. So in Park Heights, again, for the purpose of condemning and closing 10-foot alley extending from the west side of Delaware Avenue, southwesterly, to 128.5 feet, more or less, to a 10-foot alley extending from the northwest side of Virginia Avenue, northwesterly 395 feet, to the southeast side of Woodland Avenue, 10-foot alley extending from the west side of Delaware Avenue, southwesterly, yeah. And you should have gotten it. Yeah, so again, I think I gave you all those.
I remember reviewing these. I reviewed this not too long ago. I'm familiar with the area. This is like entirely surrounded by city-owned, vacant, demolished properties. It's a huge site of city-owned land, and this is just kind of in the middle of it, breaking it all up. I understand. Okay, thank you.
No, not a problem at all. Any other comments or questions? Let's see, Eric Holcomb is trying to get. Okay, well, if there are no additional questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the bill favorable.
Second.
Moved by Dorsey, second by Cohen. Ready for a vote? Yes. Councilman Burnett?
What I
All right. And he's in traffic. I love it. Be safe. Cohen?
Yes, sir.
All
Mr. Dorsey.
Yes.
Mr. Dorsey votes aye. Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mr. Henry votes aye. Member Sneed.
Yes.
Member Sneed votes aye. Mr. Chairman, six votes affirmative. Move on to the next bill, the next two bills.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you. Okay, so we have two more agenda items that we can that we'll hear simultaneously at this point. It is City Council Bill 190438, City Streets Closing North Durham Street and 16-foot alley, and we'll also be hearing City Streets Opening North Durham Street. Okay. Excuse me for a second.
So, brother, I'm in this.
Do you want to vote on the last bill?
Yes, we're working on elevating Councilman Schleifer, Vice Chair of the committee, and then we'll have him vote for the last piece. Bear with us as we get Councilman elevated. Thank you for your patience. Hold on for 1 second. Okay, so in the interest of time, we will again we'll just start talking about the opening and closing, and then we'll vote on them all together once Vice Chair is elevated. So for both the openings and closing, we have favorable reports from Law, Planning, HCD, DOT, and BDC. I'm assuming that everyone stands by the reports. If not, please indicate if there are any additions or changes.
Mr. Chair, Eric Teaser from Planning.
Thank you.
I just wanted to highlight in our report for both bills 437 and 438 that we were recommending favorable and that the condition that upon future sale of the street bed, it would remain open as a private right-of-way for public use and not consolidated into adjacent parcels. And that text is in our cover memo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman Dorsey.
can Eric repeat what he just said so I fully understand that?
Sure. Can you please repeat that? Thank you, Eric.
Absolutely. I'm just reading from our recommendation that we are recommending approval of these two bills with the condition that upon future sale of the street bed, that it would remain open as a private right-of-way for public use and not consolidated into any adjacent parcels.
Thank you. So there,
All right.
how,
And that will be the sales ordinance for the closing.
in what is there any relevance to the passage of these bills right now? Is there some amendment that should be made to accept those recommendations, or is this is just something that would have to happen at a later date were a bill put forth in order to approve actual sale, correct?
Yeah, it can be handled at a later date, but there's an adjacent subdivision to the west and frontage for those parcels was necessary.
Right. And then just to clarify additionally, Councilman, again, that will be part of the sales ordinance as it moves forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from members of the committee? Okay, any additional agency testimony at this point? All right, if there is none, I will. Oh yeah, actually, yes. So let's go back since Councilman Schleifer is now on board with us. Can we go ahead and reopen the last vote was not closed. We can go ahead and do that vote.
I was trying to raise my virtual hand for that one from the peanut gallery.
Like your background and your shades.
Yeah, I'm outside.
All right. Calling for your vote, Vice Chair Schleifer.
Yeah, yes.
All right. All right. At this point, they will entertain a motion for the two bills that we're currently discussing.
Mr. Chair, can I ask just one last question, please?
Sure.
Eric Tiso, Mr. Tiso?
Yes, sir.
I assume that that a future sale bill would be referred to the planning department for comment on sale. I'm not on the committee that handles sales.
Yes, we do get those.
That is and so you would just keep on file that this is your recommendation, and if that comes up, you'll bring that up at that time.
Correct. We just want to make it publicly known here.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. Chair, I move the bill favorable.
Second.
I think I broke the chair's video.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please hold for just a moment. Councilman Schleifer, there's some type of spectral figure sneaking up behind you.
I'm running a kindergarten over here.
All right, Cosby, you want to go back in?
Councilman Dorsey, we can hear you typing. Yeah, same thing happened to me yesterday.
I did notice.
I think Nina referred to it as furious typing. And I'm like, I'm not angry, I'm just typing quickly. So we are in the process of getting the chair a new laptop to log in through, on the possibility that that is where the problem lies. Again,
I think it's karma for him leaving me in the guest list for that first vote.
I'm just going to stick with I broke it.
There we go. Taking responsibility. That's what a councilman is supposed to do.
That's not how I usually put it, you know. I figure you're elected for two purposes: to do the work of the people and to
So you know what? Maybe we just cut it off right there and we just leave it with that first purpose.
yeah.
Because in all fairness, keep in mind that there are several dozen people who aren't showing up on this grid who have called in for the next hearing.
Yeah. Couldn't quite find a polite way of putting it anyway.
Meanwhile, the Mayor's Office of Government Relations is sticking with itself and arguing over what furious means.
So there is a widely recognized definition for furious that it is of unrestrained energy or speed, which I feel would appropriately describe the typing that we heard.
Do audio check. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, there we go. We can hear the chair again.
Okay. So that being said, for my last sentence, I'll entertain a motion if we're ready. On the open to closing, 437.
I believe, Mr. Chair, that I made a motion and it was seconded by Councilman Cohen.
Okay.
You're here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Burnett votes aye. Mr. Powell.
Yes.
Huge, right? We might even.
Mr. Dorsey.
Yes.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Member Sneed.
Yes.
Member Sneed votes aye. 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 votes absent.
All right.
Now, 438.
All right. So 430, I'll entertain the motion if there's one.
Move the bill favorable.
Okay, moved by Dorsey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Henry.
Chairman Ford.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sykes.
Yes.
Mr. Burnett.
Yes.
Mr. Burnett votes aye. Mr. Powell.
Are you
Yes.
thinking that increasing the budget would manage this?
Dorsey.
Dorsey votes yes.
Dorsey votes aye. Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Mr. Henry votes aye. Member Sneed.
Yes.
Member Sneed votes aye. Chair, 7 votes in the affirmative, move to second reading next week.
All right. Thank you so much. And again, thank you all for being patient through our technical difficulties. We will move forward with our with the moment that most of you've all been waiting for, which is City Council Bill 200502 Woodbury Historic District. This bill was introduced by Councilman Leon Pinkett of the 7th District, where this Councilman Pinkett, I want to provide an opportunity for you to speak if you'd like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I was just getting together. So thank you. Yes, I'd like to provide just brief remarks related to this bill. So the proposed legislation, City Council 20-0502, calling for the creation of the Woodbury Historic District, is the result of the successful and intentional outreach by the community at large for the purpose of preserving the historic integrity of this great community. So there will be testimony from the planning department providing details about the justification for this designation. So I won't trouble the committee with testimony along those lines. But what I will say is, despite the threats that this community has faced over the years to protect its rich history, the Woodbury, Brick Hill, and Clipper Mill communities have faithfully and ardently maintained the legacy for which it has received national recognition. Most recently, with the malicious and premature demolition of 2 stone houses on Clipper Road, the community has been galvanized around this commitment. There have been attempts to create this historic district on at least 2 occasions in the past, both unsuccessfully. This most recent attempt reflects the overwhelming community consensus around this effort. As is the case with other requests for the establishment of designations similar to the Woodbury Historic District, there is great potential that within those districts there will be projects that are at various points of the development process, such as the case with 1760 Union Avenue, also known as the Chenoweth Building. Despite its history, this building in its latter years has had a checkered existence, as through fire, neglect, vandalism, and age, it has rapidly deteriorated into its current blighted and derelict condition. The property has been condemned by the city and is on a track to determine the time and manner of its demolition. Pre-development work for this project dates back prior to October 2018, when the future of this property was discussed and planned with the ownership, developer, and city representatives. This early planning led to the granting of site plan review approval on October 10th, 2018, a review that was subsequently extended by the Department of Planning in October of 2019. While an important part of the process, the SPRC review was only one component of the pre-development process necessary for this property. Much of the future redevelopment of this property to this point has come under the purview of the Maryland Historical Trust, The development team first formally met with MHT and CHAP on January 9th, 2019. And after an initial analysis of this project and the property, MHT ultimately required the team to complete a historical preservation and consultation process. Please, thank you for granting me this time. You will see how this relates to the historic district as I continue. A process which they determined necessary for them to even consider the demolition of the property and is a requirement of the Maryland Historical Trust Act. The MHT process includes the involvement of CHAP, Preservation Maryland, Baltimore Heritage, and the Greater Hamden History Alliance. The MHT process, which is still ongoing, allows for the inclusion of recommendations and requirements by which the development team would be governed as it relates to the future disposition of the property. These stipulations would have to be agreed to before any permission to demolish the property was granted. And Mr. Chair, I wanted to read a portion of the letter from MHT. I don't know if that's if that's been submitted to you, but if not, I will go ahead and read some of that into the record. Okay. And so this is a letter from the Maryland Historical Trust dated July 29, 2019 to the Maryland Department of the Environment. And I'll just read what I believe to be some significant portions of the letter. According to the application, the project entails the demolition of the existing structure at 1760 Union Avenue and the development of the site to contain a new 5-story self-storage facility with office space, storage units, and drive aisles on ground level. The proposed structure will have vehicular access from Union Avenue. It's currently proposed the demolition of the National Register eligible structure at 1760 Union Avenue and the construction of a new structure immediately adjacent to the National Register listed warehouse factory at 1770 Union Avenue, the National Register listed Woodbury Historic District, and the National Register eligible Park Mill will have an adverse effect on historic properties. The proposed undertaking is located within the Baltimore National Historic Heritage Area, a certified heritage area. The property will introduce a new visual element that has the potential to alter the character and general aesthetics of the area. In response to that, the Maryland Historical Trust has proposed the following as next steps. That in order to resolve the adverse effects, MDE should complete the following next steps to proceed with the consultation. 1, MDE should continue consultation with the trust, the applicant, the Baltimore National Heritage Area, and other identified consulting parties to develop and evaluate alternatives or modifications to the project that would avoid, minimize, or mitigate the adverse effects. Additional consulting parties may include the following: CHAP, Preservation Maryland, Baltimore Heritage, Greater Hamden History Alliance, or other entities with an interest in the project's effects on historic properties. The trust encourages the applicant to consider efforts to avoid or minimize the adverse effects. Minimize efforts may include context-sensitive design and material choice for the new structure that will be in keeping with the character of the surrounding historic properties. Consulting parties will likely have valuable input regarding possible, meaningful, and achievable avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures for this undertaking. And I won't read any more of the letter, but I will conclude by saying the current development will not receive a permit from the Maryland Department of the Environment for demolition until this MHT process is completed satisfactorily. The development team, along with the MHT consulting parties and representatives of the Woodbury community, have had one initial meeting, with the second meeting scheduled for July. Therefore, in light of the pre-development work that has occurred to this point and the current review processes that are in place, in addition to seeking this committee's support for the Woodbury Historic District, I am also asking for the favorable consideration of an amendment that, because of the date of the SPRC approval, would grandfather the property at 1760 Union Avenue from subsequent CHAP review. This amendment, which was originally proffered by the chairman of the Planning Commission, would not alter the proposed CHAP historic district boundaries and would not exempt any future development of this particular property from CHAP review. It would rather respect the process and work that has both occurred and is still ongoing. Forcing this property owner and developer to undergo 2 historic reviews, one by MHT where CHAP is a participant and then another by CHAP independently, is burdensome. Thank you for your careful consideration of this request. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Pinkett. I will say it's helpful to have the historical narrative in terms of what's happened, not only with the district, but also with some of the properties in question. And you also made Yes, and we will go over those amendments as we go forward with the bill. As everyone on the committee knows, that historic districts also are part of the purview of staff, along with the Housing and Urban Committee. So that being said, I did want to provide an opportunity for Eric Holcomb of CHAP also make some comments as it relates to this issue.
Chair, can I ask a quick question of the bill sponsor just on something he said to get some clarity?
Yeah. Vice Chair Schleifer, yes.
Yeah, so Councilman Pinkett, I heard you had said something that they had applied twice before, but it didn't go through. I'm not aware of any of the history here. Was there a specific reason, or is it just never developed?
Thank you for that question. No, the process in order to get historic designation is one that is created in such a way that really gets community input and makes certain that that it represents the consensus of the community. And so I think in the past there may not have been that complete consensus in the community, which makes this particular application more significant because it has gone through 2 iterations, but now to this point it really reflects the will of the community.
Oh, so they're aware of everything that comes along with the designation and the
absolutely.
regulations on their properties and everything like that.
Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And thank you, Councilman. And one thing I will say, I know many of us have gotten letters and communication regarding the historic district. Most have been overwhelmingly supportive of the effort. There have been some that have also raised some questions, but for the most part, it's been one that has gotten a groundswell of support. With that being said, Eric Holcomb of CHAP, are you here with us to speak?
Yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate you giving me the time to be able to talk. I just want to thank the City Council, this committee, and also the Neighborhood Community Association, who really spearheaded this project. The first thing I'd like to do is just sort of give a background and then a summing up, and then I would see if we could ask Walter Gallus of CHAP. He's the CHAP staff. He wrote that history, and then he will give you a 3 to 5 minute history, the historic significance, why the history of Woodbury is so important. So with that in mind, I'm going to spend just about 4 minutes chatting and answering or clarifying some of the questions that were answered. Just to talk really about the process here, the Woodbury Community Association contacted CHAP back in May of 2019 to request information on the historic district designation. And we started providing that. We started chatting with them. And then by June or July, we received a formal letter that was written to the mayor and asked that the mayor move forward with local designation process. From there, we made sure that we had more than a dozen community meetings. These meetings were created by the Woodbury Community Association. CHAP staff were always present to answer questions of what does the historic preservation designation mean. And by August, the CHAP staff felt comfortable, the Woodbury Community Association felt comfortable for CHAP to send a letter out and start a online survey of every property owner. That online survey was presented to the first public hearing at CHAP on August 8, 2019. Approximately, I think 27% of the residents responded. We had 99 votes in support of the local designation. We had 41 folks in opposition. And the CHAP, the Preservation Commission, decided to move forward that was a solid community outreach. Again, over a dozen community outreaches occurred. In December, we also had the second CHAP hearing. And again, we looked to make sure that the boundaries were correct, that we met all the historic preservation criteria, and we moved it forward. Just recently in April, we had a planning commission hearing. And now we're having this hearing. In this hearing, I went into the office during the COVID-19 and did approximately 500-piece mailing to every property owner to make sure that everybody knew that this committee hearing was occurring. So with that in mind, I just want to maybe step back and talk about what is local historic district and what does it provide? And what it does is it helps guide the changes in the neighborhood. What that means to folks, all exterior changes are reviewed and approved by CHAP. And this ensures that the historic fabric and the historic character of that neighborhood is preserved. Folks who buy into local historic districts, they love their house, but they also love the neighborhood that they moved into. And that's why they buy into and support the sort of the design review that we have. We don't stop the change, but we guide the change to keep Woodbury looking like Woodbury. It also provides a two-part process for demolition. Part one would examine the structure and determine if that building is historic or not historic. What that means is the building old enough, has the building is in such a state of deterioration, it's lost its historic character, its structural integrity. So we look at that. If the building is considered not historic, then a demolition application, we would approve a demolition application. If it is considered historic, then there's a step two, and that's more of an economic analysis to see if the building can feasibly be reused. So that's sort of what the process does. I'm going to just sort of switch now to sort of a conclusion and say that, you know, why a local historic district for Woodbury? And the first one is that the Woodbury history is nationally important. And I could talk to you about Robert Vogel, who was one of the assistant curator of the Smithsonian, and how much he spent hours and months researching the Jones Falls Valley, and he considers it as or more important than Lowell, Massachusetts, which is now part of the under the management of the National Park Service. So what we have is extraordinary historic fabric, from Brick Hill to the antebellum and stone houses to all the mills there, all the ancillary buildings that are there, and it creates an extraordinarily historic district and look and character, and that's what we want to preserve. The second thing is we want to make sure that the Woodbury Community Association, they spearheaded this. They were the ones that came to CHAP staff. They were the ones that worked the community outreach. They talked to everybody. They sent out flyers. They knocked on doors, social media, and like I said, well over a dozen community outreach. And I think that's still going on too. And the other thing which is really exciting for me is historic preservation is a neighborhood revitalization tool. And I would offer that anybody out there go to the CHAP website, and we just posted a little snippet of a report that we just got done by Place Economics. And it talks about, and what it does is it compares local historic district designation to National Register historic district designation areas, and to neighborhoods that are neither is local or National Register. And what it found out is that local designation is one of the best ways for us to preserve the value, maintain the value, and even slowly increase the value of neighborhoods. It's a revitalization tool. It's a preservation tool. And we want to keep the wealth and the value in Woodbury for folks who are creating that they bought their house and that's where they put most of their wealth. We also want to make sure that the historic character and the value is there. So with that in mind, I just want to stop and say I can answer any questions. I will be here to answer any questions if there's talk or debate or deliberations and you want me to say something, that's great. I was wondering if we could find Walter and he could just tell you how wonderful this history is. He did an extraordinary work on the historical research. Thank you.
So thank you. And I will say, it's great hearing, about the exhaustive community outreach. I know we communicated in terms of you getting out those letters in a very timely fashion to the affected property owners. So very much appreciated as well. And someone who's kind of heard some of this CHAP history, I think it's very unique, very interesting. Is Walter?
I was just going to say it was actually a wonderful thing because not only I was stuffing envelopes, but the director of planning and the assistant director of planning, and we're stuffing envelopes too. So thank you, everybody that was working to help us get that mailing out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Is Walter with us? Walter Gallen? Got him? Gallen? Galls? Let's see, is he able to say something in the chat? We're trying to get a handle on where Walter is. I believe he might have called in, but we can't identify him. Let me see. Eric, do you know what phone number Walter will be calling in from? Found him? Hold on for 1 second. My audio is down now. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Okay. Walter, think we can hear you now? You still muted?
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes, Eureka.
Oh,
Hey,
wonderful.
Walter.
Oh, great. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to give you a really brief history based on the staff report that I presented at the second hearing for the designation and in December. It's all laid out. All this process, as Eric said, is laid out in our rules and regulations. And so we respond to that based on the neighborhood writing the request for the designation to the mayor's office. The mayor's office sends that to us, and there's very specific steps, and that includes doing research on the history. I organized the report in 3 parts: physical development, social and cultural history, and architecture, and then talked about how this district meets our criteria for evaluation, which again is all laid out in our rules and regulations. In terms of the physical development, you just picture in your mind going from east to west from the Jones Falls there at Woodbury. And the Jones Falls was the spine, this industrial spine through which early in the 19th century, it was a source of power for things like flour mills. But then, and in 1803, Elijah Tyson's it was called the Flouring Mill, Woodbury Flouring Mill, was in operation. And in 1843, it became 2 names come into play, 2 more names, Horatio Gambrill and David Carroll, who converted the flouring mill to the Woodbury factory. And from that point on, and not just at that mill, but other places up and down the Jones Falls valleys, these mills converted from producing flour to becoming cotton mills. There was a railroad line along that corridor, which today is now the line for the light rail that's still in existence. And then from that point, things expanded to the west. We have Robert Poole and German Hunt in 1853 that were building up what became the largest foundry and machine shop in the state, the Poole and Hunt Foundry. And then what ties in with that, though, too, is that both Gambrill and Carroll, as well as Poole and Hunt, began to build workers' housing nearby to make this, in effect, like a company town or a village. The city's annexation captured Woodbury in 1888, and it's really into the end of the 19th century and then really into the 20th century that the layout changes. First, from closest to the Jones Falls, you've got the wonderful stone houses that you can still see from the interstate and from the light rail line, and as well as the ones along Clipper Road and in Brick Hill. But then farther to the west, and you have some detached houses along Druid Hill Drive. But then farther to the west, you get a more organized layout when row house development really started to take off in the early 20th century and into the 20th century. Socially and culturally, why cotton? Well, it was cotton duck. Cotton duck is the cloth for sailcloths for the clipper ships, the Baltimore clipper ships, as well as twine and netting came out of these mills. Another name that's associated here is William E. Hooper, who joined Gambrill, and he would build, it was B. Hooper who built the Meadow Mill, which we all know so well, in 1877. His name can still be seen on the building, on the tower of the building. His architect, Reuben Gladfelter, another important figure that plays in here too, as he was the company architect. Poole and Hunt made what we say made the things that made the 19th century America work, starting with real basic things like presses and gears and shafts and boilers and tanks. But then later on into the 19th century, the machinery for cable railways in Baltimore and DC and Chicago and New York, and the machinery that aided the construction of the U.S. Capitol building during around the Civil War period, and the iron columns that support it today. It was a company town. It was patriarchal. It was pretty much a white working class from rural Maryland. It was men, women, and children who all worked in these mills. Went through boom and bust times, depending on which war and which economy collapsed afterwards. And the state's largest strike of the textile workers happened in 1923, which really changed everything when the company, instead of working with the unions, evicted the workers and started moving its operations to the south. Architecturally, it's in terms of residential. We know the stone houses and the Brick Hill duplexes. And then there's plenty of, and then there's the 19th century row houses that we don't always think about that much, but there are some beautiful ones on Rock Rose and Girard, Hooper, and parts of Druid Park. And then into the 20th century, it started to fill in on streets like Keystone and Malden initially, and then later on Parkdale, more on Keystone. And then in the 1940s, Parkdale and Druid Park Drive, and even as late as 1950 on Girard Street. Freestanding houses, there are some later from the 1860s and early 1900s that are on Druid Park Drive. There are two churches, what is now Shiloh United Apostolic Church, the beautiful stone church that dates to 1867, and the nice little church today called Woodbury Bible Church on Girard Street. And industrial buildings, of course, those are the ones that started it all. The mills along the eastern edge. Park Mill is still there and in good shape, 1855. That's where twine and netting were made originally. Meadow Mill, 1877. Chenua, which was already mentioned by Councilman Pinkett. Within that are portions, although portions of it in this destroyed building that's been heavily damaged by fire of the Woodbury factory. And then, of course, the huge Poole and Hunt complex, which is now almost always all completely redeveloped for reuse. And then finally, what was originally called the Hooperwood Mill, which was at the west end of the district. Finally, just and quickly, are the three criteria. CHAP has four criteria that we hold up to see what criteria does this building or this district or this potential landmark, how does it fit one or any of these four criteria to make it worthy of designation? And in this case, three of the four would fit this designation, and that is that it relates to the district, it relates to the first criteria, events in history of Baltimore very much throughout its history. Secondly, the second criteria is its association with significant individuals. Most of them, I would say, like labor leaders or factory owners and political leaders in the city. And finally, and certainly not least, of course, is the architecture. that's my quick summary, and I'd be happy, as Eric said, to answer any questions anybody might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter, for that very detailed and fascinating history. I did want to provide an opportunity if any members of the committee have any questions or comments at this point. If not, I will also open it up. I know there's probably some community testimony. There may be some people from the community who are here to have comments at this point. I don't know how many we've online. Okay, so we're going down the list now. Caller number 9. We're going through. Hold on just a second. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Yes, please give us your name.
I can hear you now.
Okay, yes, please give us your name and go ahead with your testimony, please.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Frank. I have lived in Woodbury for over 30 years in the same house on Druid Park Drive. My testimony would be that everything everybody said pretty much. I would like the neighborhood to be able to keep its charm and history and not change the reason why I moved into this neighborhood. And I would just like to see things stay the way they are.
All right. Yeah. I mean, all right. Next on the list. Still trying to get through the list of people testifying, so please give us a second. We've gone through all testimony. All right. So again, we have gone through all testimony. I do want to make mention, Councilman Pinkett alluded to some of the previous work that had been done in the community as it relates to storage structures, not only with Maryland Local Trust, but also with CHAP. And so, let's see, Woodbury Community Association, Higgins, anybody help me testify? I can't get on. So somebody for Woodbury Community Association, Higgins, is trying to testify. So, the Woodbury Community Association. We also saw Christopher Whips. All right, Woodbury, can you speak now?
Hi, this is
Mr. Whips.
Whips. Can you hear me?
Yes, Christopher Whips. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for being patient.
Certainly.
Please go ahead.
Hey, thank you all for taking the time to hear this. Councilman Pinkett, you've been an absolutely incredible partner for this process, and I thank you. My wife and I moved here just over 3 years ago. I think for the same reasons that folks have chosen to live here for 30 years, right? Absolutely great charm, deep history. It's fantastic when we have folks come in from out of town to visit Baltimore. They're surprised and they love it. And so we all, I think the majority of us in Woodbury are appreciative for development, but that development guided by CHAP and those rules that are in place. And we appreciate that in consideration of all the members. Also, again, thank you, Councilman Pinkett. Thank you, Mr. Holcomb, and thank you, Walter. I think you captured very well all the key points, so I won't reiterate them. Over.
I'll say, Mr. Whips, thank you for your testimony. It's good hearing from someone who's in the community in terms of this perspective, so thank you so much.
Hey.
Woodbury Community Association?
Yes. Yes.
Hey, we're ready for you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you. I'm trying. I want to thank everybody. And let me get my dog. Hey. Sorry about that. She's been quiet this entire time. This is Sherry Higgins. I'm the president of the Woodbury Community Association. And on behalf of the residents we serve, we ask you to support and advance our initiative towards the historic district. Just a refresher, we're bound on the north by Cold Spring Lane, on the east by the Jones Fall River, the I-83, on the south by Druid Hill Park, and on the west by Green Spring Avenue. We have industrial and manufacturing buildings, heritage homes, and new construction, all nestled within a quaint village-like setting. No doubt you have had letters, both pro and con, regarding our initiative, as well as personal testimony. As of today, we believe between our letter writing campaign and the campaign for people to write individual heartfelt notes, we believe you have about 75 emails, letters bombarding you. Oh, thank you. So we have a good turnout. I do want to address one question. One question that came up a few minutes ago was talking about a previous attempt to make Woodbury Historic District. That was probably around 2006. I was just moving here, but that did not go through primarily because we did not have cohesive boundaries as we do now. We had boundaries that went up and down streets and broke it apart. I wanted to talk about our initiative, which has been very strongly supported by the community. We polled the community to find out if they were even interested. And as a result of that, we got a committee together. We have published CHAP phone numbers, our committee phone numbers. We identified block captains to pass out flyers to each and every home. We had over 520 flyers that went out. The flyer had the proposed boundaries on the back, some detailed information that talked about the survey is coming next week. Our contact numbers, Eric Holcomb and Walter Gallus's contact numbers, We just hit the street. We also left this same flyer at our little mom and pop store that's at the corner of Parkdale and Druitt Park Drive for anybody that might not be on our email list. I'm not going to review again the CHAP surveys. We're very proud that we had about 27-28% response rate out of about 519. And I think for community surveys, there is that understanding that that is a good turnout. Between May 21st, which is when the stone houses came down, and now, we actually had over 20 community outreaches and events. This was either the monthly community meetings, it was special events. We had 3 special events at our local breweries. We had tables and pass outs at our annual block party, the hangout. And at each and every meeting, the CHAP staff, either Eric Holcomb, Walter Gallus, or Caitlin Arnett, were in presence, in participation, to be available to answer questions. At one of our outreaches at a brewery, we did have Nathan Denny's of Greater Hampton Heritage give a slide presentation and a lecture on our mill heritage. So between our community meetings, our block party, our socials at our breweries, our history lesson, we tried to appeal to as many people as possible and get new participation. We posted all meetings, all hearings, all newspaper articles, everything on the Woodbury Community Association website. The Clipper Mill Community Association posted everything on their Facebook. We posted Woodbury Next Door in an effort to reach people that are not subscribing to the any of the associations and or new people moving into the neighborhood. And I reached out to the Woodbury Bunch Facebook, which is a Facebook, from what I understand, of older residents still living here in Woodbury and or people who have moved away. And on that Facebook alone, there are 9 postings of either newspaper articles, the invites to our socials, and they are receiving any place between 8 and 20 thumbs up, with only 1 responder being negative. We have partnered with Greater Hampton Heritage, Baltimore Heritage, and Maryland Preservation. They have offered action letters to their subscribers. They have come to all of our socials, to many of our meetings, and they have participated in all of the hearings.
Come on, dude.
I'm sorry, if anybody also is concerned about outreach to the community, I would point out that the Baltimore Sun, the Baltimore Brew, the Baltimore Fish Bowl, and the Baltimore Business Journal have followed our progress extensively throughout this past year, and we have quite a bit of publicity on that. We have had huge turnouts for communities, packing the meeting rooms for all of our CHAP hearings and the planning hearing. We were the first community to do a remote, and we believe we had about 70. There were 91 in participation. We believe about 70 actually from the community. Why do we want to be a historic district? We do have heritage buildings, and as Walter said, the Shiloh Church, the Woodbury Bible Church, but we also have possible renovations that could happen in the future, such as Alice Manor Nursing Home, the Fox 45 building, the Sisson Auto Street on 41st, or Auto Shop on 41st. We have property owners in the section of TV Hill and Brick Hill that are well aware of the economic cost that this designation may impact us for our own remodels and our own repairs, and we have overwhelming support for that. There is the belief that we will stabilize the appearance of TV Hill and Brick Hill and possibly contribute to increased values. There has been some conversation about some economic hardships. John, stop laughing. Economic hardships from some of our homeowners. Again, we placed flyers at our mom and pop store to reach some of the people that we had not heard from. But I would say that CHAP is well acquainted. We have 36 other CHAP districts. They're well acquainted on how to handle applications and assist people with getting grants and or working out some kind of payment. In closing, I'd like to say that we look forward to joining other districts such as Barclay, Greenmount, Better Waverly, Mount Washington, in becoming a historic district. We're unique. We're nestled next to the river, to Druitt Park. We're quaint. We look forward to the repurpose of our heritage buildings and our homes with thoughtful design review, and we encourage all of you to approve our initiative with the boundaries as drawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. I couldn't help but smile as a CHAP commissioner looking across the room at Councilman Henry, who's another former CHAP commissioner. You know, I've never really seen such an exhaustive process in terms of community engagement from neighbor associations. I think you've covered all bases that could possibly be covered. So kudos to you, not only in terms of in person, but virtually and through social media as well. So you ought to be commended.
All right, and I would like to comment, it does demonstrate an awful lot of volunteer and an awful lot of community action, hitting the street, thinking of ways that we could reach people that we don't normally see on our dog walks, carrying pamphlets when we're out with the dog and passing it on to people. I think, from what I understand, 20 engagement opportunities in a year's time is strong, and we're very proud of that.
Well, you ought to be proud. It's a great model. So thank you so much. I also know that Johns Hopkins from Baltimore Heritage is with us. Johns Hopkins.
Ready? And members of the committee, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. This is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and I'll be brief. I sent in testimony earlier, but I did want to say thank you to Councilman Pinkett for his longstanding support for the historic district. I did want to address the Chenoweth tire mill building site, and particularly whether it should be grandfathered from some of its prior approvals. And I want to offer a little bit of insight. We are part of the process that the councilman talked about with the Maryland Historical Trust. But from participating in probably 2 or 3 dozen of these, I can say that there is an enormous difference between that process and what CHAP would provide. The first is the Maryland Historical Trust in that process is advisory only. So they can, whether to save that building or whether it needs to come down and a new building built, whatever they say is only advisory. The lead agency, in this case, the Maryland Department of Environment, would have the final decision. So if the building has to come down and a new building is built, the architectural design review is going to be done by the Maryland Department of Environment. I don't think that's something that I would like to see, and I know the neighbors would not like to see. Even with its advisory capacity, the Maryland Historical Trust does not have any written guidelines for what new buildings should look like. So they can offer a comment of this or that, but unlike CHAP, which has extensive guidelines for new buildings, the Maryland Historical Trust process will not provide any kind of real systematic, thoughtful way that a new building could go onto that site. In contrast, the CHAP Commission does have written guidelines, predictable standards, and I think that it is when the neighborhood is asking to become a CHAP district, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but basically that's saying that they want a seat at the table to shape how their community is going to grow. And I think that they want to have a seat at the table for their entire community, not just for part of their community. And I believe and firmly believe that the only fair way to do that is to include the Chenoweth building inside the boundary. If it needs to come down and a new building needs to be built, that's fine, but at least let the community have a seat at the table with CHAP in working through its written design standards for new buildings. And I'll conclude on that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any more testimony? Yes, good afternoon.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh,
Please go
okay.
ahead.
It doesn't really let you know that you're speaking. Hi, my name is Ellie Cowan. I'm the Director of Advocacy at Preservation Maryland. We're the statewide historic preservation organization. We've been involved in this process from the beginning. And thanks so much. I echo everybody's thanks to Councilman Pinkett for his help on this. I've submitted my written testimony that is incredibly supportive of this legislation. We would like to see the boundaries stay as is. I echo all of John's sentiments about how a local historic district really provides the community an opportunity to help guide the way that their community grows, and that oftentimes historic districts and historic preservation are seen as the enemy or in opposition to development, and that is absolutely not the case. It is about equity and bringing the community into those conversations, allowing them to have a part in deciding the future of that community and how it grows. So, using the past as a guide for the future. And again, on behalf of all of our supporters across the state in Baltimore City and within the Woodbury Historic District, our offices are actually at Meadow Mill, so we fall within that district. So we have a little skin in the game personally in that way. But we really stand with the community on this and urge a favorable report on this without the grandfathering out of the Chenuit building with the boundaries as recommended by CHAP. So we thank you very much for your time. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Molly Rick?
You should get.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking for somebody else how to testify, but I appreciate hearing. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. Okay, I think we have gone through all of the public testimony at this point. I know, are there any questions before we go on? Any questions or comments from any of the members of the committee? Okay, not seeing any. Again, thank you, Councilman Pinkett, for staying with us today. I know at the outset he mentioned some comments and potential amendments, and so given that I'm the chair of the committee, he's not a member, I would like to introduce these on behalf of Councilman Pinkett. So Amendment 1, again, this is on page 1, line 5, after preservation. Yeah, and the members have the amendments. I do want to read it off. This is on page 1, after line 5, after preservation, insert providing that certain buildings with site plan review committee's approval by a certain date are not subject to review by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. And then amendment number 2 on page 3, after line 20, insert buildings that have already received site plan review committee approval. Then also any building that has received site plan review committee approval on or before October 10th, 2018 is not subject to staff approval. Again,
Mr. Chair?
Councilman Dorsey.
Somebody just let me know that there are other people trying to testify that can't get on. And I can see in the chat right now that Nathan Denny's just 1 minute ago said that he would like to testify.
I don't see that in the chat, but if it's in the Q&A. Okay.
It's in the Q&A.
Let's see if we try to get him in. Thank you, Councilman Dorsey.
Oh, this is a Zoom meeting. The Zoom.
As well, yeah, Tracy Brown is in here as well.
Tracy and Alyssa.
Can you give me those names again? Let's see. Oh, Nathan Denny. I see now. It's in the question and answer. So one is Nathan Denny, and then I see Alyssa Brown, and I see Tracy Brown as well.
Yeah, they both have their hand up.
Okay, so bear with us. Thank you for bringing that up. We're trying to get you in. Mr. Denny's?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. And Councilman Dorsey, I really appreciate you calling that I was panicking, trying to figure out how to get your attention. So yes, my name is Nathan Denny's, and I'm a resident of Woodbury and chair of the Greater Hampton Heritage Alliance. I sent in some testimony offering my full support of the district earlier, but I wanted to take this time to offer some testimony regarding the January Tire Factory site on Union Avenue. The Greater Hampton Heritage Alliance is one of the organizations that is involved in the Maryland Historical Trust review of that site, which is planned to be demolished and replaced with a self-storage facility. I ask that the committee can approve the district with no amendments and not amend the boundary to appease a single project. It makes little sense from an urban design perspective and historical perspective, and it also undermines the historical district. The location is prominent and strongly visible within the district. It's also the site of the neighborhood's first mill, the historic center of Woodbury. CHAP originally recommended that the extant tire factory be considered non-contributing while still being located within the district boundaries. This would mean that the fate of the existing boundary would not be determined by CHAP, but future development on the site with the boundary would be subjected to design review. The Maryland Historical Trust is one step, but as Johns Hopkins described, it's not the best tool we have for preservation design review. That is best laid with the CHAP Commission, which has done fantastic work in the city reviewing projects just like this. And while I advocate for no amendments, if an amendment must be made, the best compromise is to maintain the boundary while making the tire factory building non-contributing. Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. That was Nathan Denny's. Yeah. What else we have?
Mr. Chair, I'm for Mr. Denny's. Can I ask for clarification on what he just said about maintaining the boundary, but not making this property contributing or something? I don't understand that.
Is Denny's still with us?
The building itself be considered non-contributing, but within the boundaries, which would mean that the building could be demolished without CHAP review, but whatever is developed along that site would be subject to CHAP review. So it takes in consideration future development within that boundary.
I see.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's see. Who else wants to?
Alyssa and Marion both. Alyssa Brown.
If there was some negativity. So far, single negative.
Ruth Carnum.
That's you.
Yes, this is Ruth Kronheim, and I don't really have anything to add what has been said.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Okay. Is there anyone else that we've missed? Let's see. Alyssa Brown, Tracy Brown.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, is this Tracy? Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, I can't hear you through my headphones, but yeah. So I'm calling in today. I urge you all to vote in support of the proposed district as presented. I've been a neighbor in this neighborhood since 1996. I moved here when it was not what you see as Woodbury today. There was vacants on every block. You know, Clipper Mill was not Clipper Mill. It was still Pool and Hunt Foundry with like tractor trailers parked in the lot. Our neighborhood's come a long way. And the reason it's come a long way is because of our intact Mill Village. People come here because of that. Otherwise, we'd just be some random group of houses on the west side of 83. And I strongly believe that that is our inner harbor. We don't have waterfront property. We're not in a sexy part of downtown. The reason people now come to Woodbury is because of our historic buildings, because of the homes here, because of the setting, the entire Mill Village as a whole. And that's why I have my house here since 1996. That's why I have my business here since 2000 in Hooper Mill. People walk into that space and they are just wowed. They are wowed looking at the 16-foot tall ceilings, the 10-foot tall windows, the nails in the floor where the looms used to be. It's just incredible. You can't rebuild that stuff. We need to preserve this neighborhood. Woodbury is got 4 different National Register districts. We're on the Brick Hill Register, Meadow Mill, Pool and Hunt Foundry, and Woodbury's homes have a National Register listing as well. We're part of the National Heritage Area, not the local heritage area. We're part of the National Heritage Area. So we are worth this. We are worth this. So I ask that you all vote in favor of this bill as presented because it includes all of Woodbury. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the passion behind your testimony. I see Alyssa Brown is also still with us. I think you're unmuted at this point.
Great. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
If I had $1 for every time I have to say that throughout the day these days. So my name is Alyssa Brown, and I'm have been a resident of Woodbury for 4 years now. I had the great opportunity to work closely with the WCA on a number of the different outreach activities that Sherry Higgins mentioned, so I won't reiterate all of them, but it left me with an indelible impression that our community is clearly in support of this historic designation. And I ask today that the committee move forward without amendments to the current boundaries. And thank you all for your time. And I know, I think the other thing that was mentioned today that bears repeating is just how much the community wants to have a seat at the table as development continues in our area. I think everyone that lives in this community understands that change does occur and that there are many changes ahead for our small community, but we do want to have an opportunity to have a voice as those changes come. So thank you so much.
So thank you so much for your testimony. I know at this point we've gotten a lot of overwhelming support for this. Is there anyone else who wants to testify at this point, has anything additional to add? And again, thank you, Councilman Dorsey, for noting those who were still trying to get in. But again, thank you all for the comments at this point. I don't see anyone else listed to provide commentary. But again, it's pretty clear that we have a groundswell of support for this. Now, going back to one of the previous comments, again, we understand, looking at, we're not looking to change the boundaries, but again, looking at those buildings that had gotten previous site review approval, as Councilman Pinkett indicated. And so those are the 2 amendments that are in front of the committee at this point. Yes, Councilman Dorsey.
Fred Sharman is still trying to testify.
Is it also in favor of the historic district?
I'm just relaying this. He's still trying to testify.
I don't see him.
I believe he is listed in the attendees as Marion Glebe, Marion and Fred.
Okay, let's take a look. Thank you again. We're working on it. Bear with us as we're trying to work through all this.
You did.
Hello? Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you very much for letting me sneak in here. My name is Fred Sharman. I'm a 7-year resident of Woodbury, and I teach architecture and urban design at Morgan State University. And I have a letter on file with you all, email on file, and I won't reiterate any of that. I just want to build on what people are saying, and say that I also have an office here in Woodbury in one of the old mills. And that's why I want to recommend and underscore the aspect of live and work that has historically taken place here and will continue on, hopefully, into the future. And so that's why I think the boundaries as the standing and include the Shenwood building are really important to maintain. So I want to ask you all to vote in favor of the bill with no amendments to the boundaries. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony as a planner and a CHAP commissioner. I can appreciate that. Councilman Henry, you have something?
Yeah, I just want to make certain that I'm understanding what is being proposed in the amendment because a number of the community people have testified to seems to be in conflict with what's proposed. My understanding is that the amendment does not change the boundaries of the district. What it does is it grandfathers in a specific project that has already received site plan review approvals. And so for anybody who is concerned that the amendment removes that parcel physically from the district, that is not my understanding of the amendment. And I'm looking at the sponsor for confirmation of that. That there's a significant difference between grandfathering in a particular development proposal and changing the boundaries of the district.
So Councilman Henry, you are correct. So I appreciate you clarifying that. And then Councilman Pinkett, if you want to have a couple words on that point.
You want to hear Pinkett again?
Councilman Pinkett, did you have anything to add at this point or no?
Councilman Henry is correct. The boundaries of the historic district are not being changed. The particular property on Union Avenue is being grandfathered in because of site plan review. And in addition, and you all have the letter on testimony and the review that the property is currently undergoing through the combination of MDE, MHT, which is not just exclusive to the organizations or associations that I mentioned, which really can include, more entities within the community to weigh in on a variety of different issues as it relates to the future redevelopment of that property. And if this project does not move forward, it does not exclude that parcel from the historic district. Any new development that will come on that property would be under the historic designation or historic district designation.
Thank you, Councilman, for that. Much appreciated. Okay, it looks like we've gotten through all testimony. I will also pause in case there's anyone else who's trying to testify. Make sure we got everybody's voices heard. Okay, so I previously moved the members. Is there a second? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so let's see. Jesse Dillon's Megalith. Hold on, bear with us. Trying to get you in.
Is it Norbert or is it Jesse who's trying to testify?
I'm not sure which one. Let's see.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. So I'm Jesse. Norbert is my husband, and I just wanted to say I've already written letters, but I just wanted to also speak in this forum and let you know we've lived in the community for probably 6 or 7, about 6, 7 years now, and our backyard is right on the historic mill building, and that's one of the things that drew us to the neighborhood. Was we love learning about history, and I think at least just maintaining some semblance of the facade on the exterior of that building would really benefit the community in maintaining the charm and the character of the neighborhood. If that building goes, everybody who's drawn there, and it's not just people who live there, but everyone from around the city who's drawn to that area to just come marvel at the buildings and think about all the history that has happened there, good and bad. That's all gone, and you basically decimated that neighborhood if they destroy the exterior of that building. And so that's really it. You destroy the history, there's not much left, and people forget history when you destroy buildings like that. So that's really it. I don't need to belabor the point. I just thought I'll throw in my 2 cents.
Okay, well, your point is well taken, and do appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right. Yes, Councilman Pinkett, please.
No, I just want to say that I believe that the MHT process is inclusive and really allows for any. It is put in place to mitigate adverse effects by the disposition of properties such as the one that's under consideration. And so there is no restrictions on what the community and the historic preservation community can place as far as requirements on the property owner as it relates to what this property will look like, whether it's demolished or new construction. And if the west elevation is of consideration, that should be a primary consideration that's advanced by both the community and historic preservation community before this property is even considered for demolition. And there's nothing in the MHT process, the MDE process, that precludes the community from doing so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Is there anyone else that we are missing at this point? Okay. So is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Second by Councilman Henry. Yes.
Did you call me?
Yes. What's your vote, Councilman?
Yes, I just can't hear him.
Okay. Yes. So Schleifer's yes.
I can't tell what Richard is saying.
Councilman Burnett. I'll repeat. Yes.
Yes.
Going for the vote. Okay. Councilman Burnett is yes. Cohen.
Yes.
Cohen's a yes. Dorsey.
On the amendment, I don't think I can support this amendment. No.
Okay. Dorsey's no.
Yes.
Sorry, yes.
All right. So that's amendment number one. Or both move together. That's what I did. Okay. So, all right, is there a motion to move the bill? Favorable as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Henry.
Second.
Second by Dorsey. All right, ready for a vote? Roll call. Yes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Schleifer? Yes. Burnett?
Yes.
Burnett's yes. Cohen?
Yes.
Cohen's yes. Dorsey?
Yes.
Dorsey's yes.
Yes.
Sneed?
Yes.
Sneed, yes. All right. Well, again, thank you all for your patience today with not only our technical difficulties, but also the length of the hearing. But we are also happy to have the input of community residents, so you ought to be commended for your work. Also, for our agency representatives and staff, thank you so much for your diligent work on these matters. We know it's not easy to do it all in this environment. There being no further business for this committee, we will stand adjourned. Again, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, be safe, and be healthy. Yes, sir.
Actually, you're on your